Hey everybody, this is John for Arena Nexus MTG, and for those of you tuning in from the playlist on Pioneer Nexus MTG, welcome. This is a quick deck tech for a deck that I've been working on in my own time, and it's very familiar to those of you who have played Pioneer and Explorer for any amount of time, with a little bit of a twist. Not being Azorius Lotus Field Control, nothing terribly special there. One thing I did note, though, is when I was working on that deck, is it felt like 60 cards was actually too crammed. Now, the version I was running was the 3 Sylvan Scrying, 4 Lotus Field variant. This was before Up the Beanstalk was printed. I felt like you wanted to get the 4th copy of it in there, consistently getting in the thing. Now, most of the standard versions of this deck were running copies of Impulse, I believe it was. The one in a blue, look at the top 4 cards of your library, take a card. It's a pretty good dig spell. And it's a little bit better in the mid to late game when you're trying to draw gas after you've already set up the Lotus Field, copy it with Thespian stage stuff. Now, the thing I like about this version is, number one, you get to maximize everything. You get to maximize the 4 copies of Sylvan Scrying. You get to maximize 4 copies of Up the Beanstalk. You get to max out on copies of Farewell and Doomscar in your deck. The one weakness, obviously, you only have 8 of each to draw in your now 80 card deck. While you are increasing the density with the 4 copies of Sylvan Scrying and Lotus Field to find Lotus Field, you're a little bit lower in finding your 4 copies of Strict Proctor or 4 copies of Discontinuity. Obviously, you could play a 4th color and play something like Blood Sun, but I do think this is a nice, decent enough setup. Now, the other downside of this version, you're not going to see Teferi as consistently. So, that said, I think the pluses outweigh the minuses. As Up the Beanstalk is just kind of absurd when you're casting Doomscars and Teferis and Farewells and Shark Typhoons and Discontinuities and Dream Trawlers and Ondu Inversion. Well, maybe not Ondu Invert. Yeah, even when you're casting Ondu Inversions. You're cantripping, and then obviously it has decent synergy with Yorion. Not quite as good as something like Omen of the Sea, but still very powerful overall. And then, the rest of the deck is, your standard fare of Memory Deluge and such. The sideboard has been crafted in a particular way. Now, I want to be able to board out most of, if not all of my sweepers against Control Mirror. So I have 8 slots I can bring in: Dovin's Veto, Shark Typhoon, Thought Distortion, and this would be Dromoka normally, but with Dromoka not available on Explore yet, Nimizit kind of getting the call. Leyline of Sanctity, this was kind of a way to try to hedge to make the Rakdos mid, Rakdos sack Greasefang matchups a little bit better. They're not able to disrupt you with Thought Seizes and that kind of nonsense. Thought Seize, Duress, Go Blank. If you have this in your opening hand, it kind of negates their ability to interact with what you're doing against their strategy. Then Leyline the Void as just kind of your answer to buy time in the Greasefang as a Phoenix matchups. The downside of this is, with this setup, you don't have additional cards really to bring in against Mono Green. You have a couple copies of Dovin's Veto, and that's about all you want to bring in that matchup. So you do make your Mono Green matchup a little bit worse, which that is one of the closer matchups for this deck. It might, in fact, be the closest of the matchups in terms of the gameplay, although the games are very one-sided. You either wipe their board with a Farewell and an Ondu's Inversion or a Dreamscar, or they're, turn 3 Carning, getting Stonebrain, stripping you of your Teferis, and the game isn't particularly interesting from there. There are some in the middle games with the matchup, but most of them are very one-sided in the execution. Good, bad matchups: Blue-White X Control, Spirits, Rogues. Really, those matchups, Blue-White X, I have a game plan, but I don't know how particularly good it is, and I don't really like staying through Blue-White X mirrors. And then Rogues and Spirits are they're a natural hard counter to a deck that's trying to cast 6-mana sorceries. Decks that are a little rough, depending on the draws: Mono White Humans, Boros Heroic, Boros Convoke. That's mostly a speed thing. If you have your better draws, Strict Proctor or an early interaction spell into turn 3, Lotus Field with either Strict Proctor or Discontinuity into turn 4 Sweeper. Generally, you're pretty well set up in those matchups. If you don't have your best of the best draws, or your opponent maybe has a mediocre draw, you have a shot, but those matchups can be a little bit rough. Matchups you like to prey on: Rakdos mid, Rakdos sack, is it Phoenix, Fire's variants, anything that's trying to play to the board and is a mid-range deck. It's kind of how I set up the deck. I like to play this deck a lot, which is ironic because I'm not a huge fan of Blue-White X Control, but this isn't a counterspell-based version of that. This is more of a board control deck, more akin to like a historic like black-white mid-range control deck that has a ramp element to it, rather than, you know, a blue-white control deck, so to speak. But yeah, this deck is very powerful, has some good matchups, had some bad matchups, and I find it fairly consistent in executing its game plan, so certainly a deck that checks off all the boxes, and then one of the few decks that really get to utilize Yorion to its full extent. Well, not even necessarily to its full extent, but get to utilize it with Up the Beanstalk, and it's still a pretty solid card overall as a closing threat. So let's get into some matches and show you how this deck plays. Alright, mulligan the 7-card hand. The 6-card hand is borderline keepable. I think we pitch either one of the lands or Up the Beanstalk. I think for now, we'll pitch the basic island and... Alright, so... Some type of Keenan combo deck, maybe? Maybe Rona combo? Okay, so... Okay, so they're adventurers, got it. Pass the turn. This deck has been popping up more and more. I don't know how it'll actually fare against us, but I presume since they're kind of this weird mid-range, unless they have a counterspell here, this should be quite the easy matchup. Yeah, okay, sure. I was like, I don't think they play counterspells despite playing blue. At least counterspells in the main deck. So, Fabled Mirrorbreaker, sure. So they choose to play... Huh. So, float this for green. 2 of that to copy there. Copy Up the Beanstalk. And pass. The dangerous part about these mid-range decks is, like, if they have some type of unexpected haste or something, they can be quite bad. And actually, Brazen Borrower, ironically, is one of the more difficult cards for us to deal with, just because it's one of the few instant speed things in their deck, at least main board. And we really need to find a March of Otherworldly Light for that Beanstalk. So. Lucky Clover. Yeah, this is going to force me to blow up their board here. Mm-hmm. Cycle that, draw a card. This is going to involve destroying everything, even our Beanstalk, unfortunately, but we do get the value off of it, so. Playing the Sparta's headquarters as opposed to Irrigated Farmland, because the Irrigated Farmland is cheaper to cycle. So, like, our opponent could easily pop us for a good amount of damage there. Struck Beast, yep. So we have access to 9, possibly 10 mana with Deluge. I can go Beanstalk, buy Yorion, that's 5. If we draw an untapped land, that'd be 10. I think I'm actually going to lead on Memory Deluge in case we find a Lotus Field. Let's take Lotus Field and Doomscar. Play out Strict Proctor. Trigger that. Decline. And then I can play that. I can play Up the Beanstalk. I'm going to choose to foretell instead. Yep, opponent using removal spell, which is fine. Gotta be careful how much damage I take because this comes a 5/5. So, Fate of Wishes. The heck are they going to grab outside the game? Okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's play Up the Beanstalk. Trigger. Do this. Trigger, draw a card. And then I'm going to hold up Discontinuity to deal with Chandra. Lear. Beanstalk, Wandering Emperor. Cycle this Irrigated Farmland. So play Up the Beanstalk, trigger. Teferi, trigger, and my opponent concedes. Alright, so considering what our opponent's deck is, their adventures, so they have, they have things like Teferi, or not Teferi, they have things like Bone Crusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, Love Struck Beast, Temur Clover, or Lucky Clover, Edgewall Innkeeper. I don't know that there's, and especially with the Wish part of the deck, I don't know what their sideboard is capable of having, so I could bring in Thought Distortions, but the problem is that it doesn't deal with their adventure stuff, so can't really bring in Leyline in the blind. Shark Typhoon would be okay. I really think our main deck configuration's the best. We could bring in like a couple copies of Nib Mizzet potentially, but I really feel like our main deck is pretty well suited for dealing with what they have. Now, our sideboard in this deck is limited because I do have the 3 ley lines, well, 3 of each ley line, so we're only really relegated to 8 relevant cards in a lot of matchups. This hand is pretty decent. Turn 2 Sylvan Scrying, turn 3 Strict Proctor. Play Lotus Field. So, this is like probably one of our better openers. Sparta versus Ketria. Opponent with Questing Druid, sure. Play this, play this. Double Lotus Field and pass. Edgewall Innkeeper. Okay, so we play Strict Proctor first. That resolves. Even if they kill it in response, doesn't do them any good. And they could have Brazen Borrower here, but that doesn't really change anything per se. Just makes it easier for me to blow up their board next turn. They're really incentivized to play something pre-combat here. If they're going to play something this turn, they should have done it... Doing this to deal with the bigger threat. Attack there. Oh, attacking both. I'm fine with that. Yep. And I get to draw a card off of Vigil Unkeeper. Okay, so this can grab the Lotus Field. Play this out. Get a Lotus Field, decline. Putting Yorion in our hand makes a little bit more sense. Leer does them no good when we just cast a Farewell, so we'll take the 3. Okay. 7 mana. They have Ultimatum. Excuse me. Alrighty then. That's certainly something. Always something there to remind you. That's a cute grindy card. Sure. Has Ward 3, so you're going to use up most of your mana to keep your alert alive. Okay. This game's basically over now. Teferi, trigger, draw a card. And my opponent agrees that the game is over. Like I said, though, our deck is really designed to kind of punish these kind of mid-range piles, so makes sense. You can see their deck being okay against aggressive decks and decent against like Rakdos piles, but I don't know. I've been seeing the Adventure deck pop up more and more. Don't know how good it is. On the play. And don't think we can keep this hand. I mean, okay, this hand is very good. Pull it back. March of Otherworldly Light. Opponent's mulliganing fairly aggressively, so I have no idea what that means. They might think we're on Enigmatic Fires, so this could be like Rakdos or something. I'm mulliganing aggressively to like a Thoughtseize plus pressure. Because Yorion generally doesn't mean blue control, so especially our variant of blue control. It looks like it's mono green. Well, Invasion. Which I've seen some people running Up the Beanstalk in that slot, so yep. Cure is kind of mildly annoying. Put some amount of pressure on them. One tap with access to 6 mana this turn. So a card we're really looking to dodge is either Storm the Festival or Karn. Creatures I don't care about as much because Farewell cleans them up so well. Especially things like, looks like this is Wolf Willow Haven, so they're gonna... Okay, nope, looks like Storm the Festival then. But Farewell is... yeah, sure, that's fine. I'm going to play the 2 to draw your card. Apparently the answer is yes. Should probably put this Yorion in my hand. And pass. This is another matchup that I am still trying to 100% figure out. Like a lot of matchups, I'm pretty set with where the deck is or where this build of the deck is. One of the matchups I'm not is mono green, especially since I've gone to the new sideboard configuration in the 80 card version that doesn't have Ether Gust to add to the party in the post-war games. Vivian Reed, huh? Okay, that's probably a nice one fun of, and probably a card that's going to die this turn to all the Storm Giants. Questing Beast, sure. Good chance they block here. Yep. Yeah. Right church, wrong one. Foretell. Pass. It's actually not a bad card in their deck. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So they gotta have a decent last card besides Questing Beast. It's gotta be like Storm the Festival, right? One of the difficulties of this deck is Planeswalkers, especially in a deck like Mono Green. I'm not going to deny that. So the opponent gets to play 2 mana. Yep, draw a card. Okay. Sure. Weird templating of Questing Beast allows them to kill. Let's see if they cast a turn, yeah. So we did draw an untapped land. Cast Doomscar. Fire this up. Kill Yorion. Okay. I don't really think I care all that much about so 6 and 4. Cast Memory Deluge. Shark Typhoon, Discontinuity. And cast Discontinuity. And pass. Power of Vigor. Okay. Interesting. Version goes for a lot more big dumb idiot creatures, it seems. So exile all creatures. Still get to play Teferi. Discontinuity, get another Shark Typhoon token. This is kind of how it looks when we win this matchup. Alright, and my opponent conceded. So the unfortunate part is almost everything went right that game, and the mono green matchup feels, of all the matchups, I think it feels the closest. especially now that there's no Ether Gusts in the sideboard. When I was playing a 60-card version that was just like the Sylvan Scryings, there was, you know, 2 Ether Gusts in the sideboard or whatever. Obviously, you can bring in like the Dovin's Vetoes, which I'm going to do because the cards we care about, Storm the Festival and Karn. You know, cards like they're very heavy on creatures as it is. So cards like Inkwell Shave, a Wandering Emperor, and Dream Trawler, I guess. But those are the main cards we care about. Obviously, they can beat us, especially when their version has Ulvenwald Oddity and Questing Beast. They have a little bit more of an aggressive bent to them, and we also did get very lucky. That was one of our like absolute better draws, especially for a Mulligan to 6. Like, we literally had the perfect setup, and then we drew into the sweepers when we needed them. The reason this matchup is more difficult without the Ether Gusts is you don't have that one other bridge play. Now, obviously, in the 60-card version, I was running 2 March and 2 of the XL, 1-mana XL effect that I always forget the name. Now I'm running 6, so I'm still running 6 post board, but now it's 6 in the 80-card deck rather than 6 in a 60-card deck. So, the nice part about March is March can hit either an Elf or a Wolf Willowhaven in the early turns. And this is the one matchup that I want to like continue to test, continue to get a good idea of the matchup. Matchups that are terrible: blue-white control normal version, spirits, Dimir Rogues. Matchups that are a little bit of a top or a little bit rough: mono-white humans, Boros Heroic. You know, to an extent, Convoke kind of goes in the same category. A lot of it depends on if they have their absolute fast draws, and we have none of our early interaction, then those matchups can be rough. Matchups we want to see: Rakdos Mid, Rakdos Sack, Is It Phoenix, you know, basically all the mid-range, like the Temur Adventures deck. To a certain extent, the Fires decks are a pretty good matchup, although if the Fires pilot is very good, knows how to play their deck the most at instant speed, and not overextend into a Farewell, then that matchup can be quite close. But I think the closest matchup in terms of like how it goes is the mono green matchup, and obviously that's a matchup that you would like to be favored. You know, that's probably the most played deck in Pioneer. Explorer, a little bit more of a toss up, but you know, that's the matchup that you absolutely want to have down. And the downside of going to the 3 ley line build with the Yorion is you only have 8 card sideboard slots to work with. And I built the deck in such a way that against Blue-White X control, I have 8 cards to bring in. So Dovin's Vetoes, Thought Distortion, Nib Mizzet, and the additional Shark Typhoons. So there's no real like additional thing for creature matchups. You know, certain matchups like mono or against like mono white. There was the green white Hate Bearers deck I played against the other day. I brought in the ley lines, even though you wouldn't normally bring that in against aggressive decks, simply because they showed me Elite Spellbinder, and then in the post board games they're also likely to bring in Invasion, so that kind of blanks at least part of the effect of those cards. So I think our opponent might be roping us here. You know, a lot of people, you know, get salty and just rope you. It's just like, okay, well, I mean, if you don't want to play the matchup, just concede and move on. But more power to our opponent, I guess. And they concede. So unfortunate that we didn't get game 2 and game 3, as that's actually a matchup I want to test against, but it happens. Match 3 on the play again is always nice. His hand's got everything, but needs a second land. We're about 44% to draw a land. We'll try it, but this hand is a risk because of that specifically. Okay, looks like we get mono green again. And get like the best of all worlds here. This could be elves too, but kind of open for mono green. Mono. Well, still could be elves, but looks like with Wolfwool Haven, this is mono green. So play that. Play this. And then we get to start deploying our game plan before they really start deploying theirs. They have 3 mana, 4 mana. Old Growth Troll. Okay, so start with Teferi. We're going to tuck that just to keep their devotion low. Okay, like if they play Cavalier here, it's annoying, but okay, that's whatever. Okay, land number 6 is good. I think we just play Shark Typhoon. Go ahead and do the thing. Okay, 4. Storm the Festival. Opponent gets to play with a lot of mana this turn. Sure. Love to find a farewell. Okay, play this. Get to make a not quite baby shark, but and we really need to find a March and Lotus Field, I think. Okay, so do this for 3, pitching the backup to Teferi, I think. Lucranos. Karn is the biggest threat in the matchup, but only if we're not ahead on board, which we currently very much are. Lucranos is annoying. It's what, 3 Nykthoses? Yeah. Invasion. Strict Proctor is just so randomly annoying in so many ways. Sure. See what they find here. Ah, so they're going for Pithing Needle. So what could I find? That would lead me to start by doing this. Trigger. Discontinuity. Memory Deluge. And do this. Discontinuity. And shave a beanstalk, shave that. Now these games might make the mono green matchup seem very easy, but it's not. We've had our game plan. We've had removal spell on one, or turn 1 or turn 2. Turn 3, play Strict Proctor, play Lotus Field. We've had our, like, A hand every game in the last 2 games. So that makes the matchup look infinitely easier than it is. When the opponent's on the play, especially if they go on the play, like turn 3 Karn, and then go get the Stone Brain, or go get, like, God Pharaoh statue or something, even Damping Sphere, we can be very, very far behind. So... wonder if we're getting roped again. But, yeah, I don't think this matchup is unwinnable for the mono green side. I think the matchup is close. The key card is definitely Karn, which, what matchup with mono green isn't, right? So, why would I keep this hand? I can go Doomscar on 2, Foretell on 2, do it on 3, and if they're mostly a creature-based draw, this hand, so I think on the back of that, we're going to try it. Yep, turn 1 Elf. Okay, pass. Actually, I screwed up because I don't have a second green source. So... that is unfortunate, but for now, we'll Foretell Doomscar, hope to draw on white source, untap white source off the top. Which we have a decent amount of, but not super many. Okay, Up the Beanstalk. This is our opponent's turn to do something broken. They have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana, so yeah, that's unfortunate. Old Growth Troll, yeah. So this was the risk of the hand. If it had been smarter, our hand would be a little bit better, but okay, so cast Doomscar. Increase their mana production even more. Play that. This is risky if they have Karn, but yep. That's okay, that is a little bit more manageable, although they are drawing a ton of cards off of it. So they must have another Seascape Leveler. Yeah, that's ironically more than fine. remotely interested in playing a Karn game. But alright, I guess I have to play first. Cannot keep this hand. Again. This hand isn't great, but I do think we keep back that and that. Strict Proctor. Unfortunate, but a 5 mana here. Buffalo Haven. I guess into Kiora. No, and a Karn. Fantastic. Kiora. Invasion. Interesting. Really would like to find another untapped land next turn. Draw one more land. Yep, untap land this turn, or basically we're dead. I guess Farewell would also be acceptable draw. Yep. Unfortunate. If these were, you know, good for something, then... But unfortunately, we're 1 mana short, and they had that on Teferi, so we're kind of... But, you know, if we drew a Farewell or an untapped land there, then, you know, it's a completely different game, so... That's what I mean by mono green can be quite the close matchup.